Revathi Raj on the stage.
May I now request Dr. Dusya Sir, Chairman of Trinity 2016, to accompany Dr. Kaushal Pandey on the stage.
I also request Dr. Pawar Sir, Vice President of Trinity 2016, to come on the stage and take his seat.
I now call upon the ex-General Secretary Umang Sheth and Organizing Secretary of Trinity 2016, Sudarshan WP, to join the dignitaries on the stage.
I will now hand over the mic to Radhika, ex-Wallpaper and Magazine Secretary.
Voltaire once rightly said, "Men who are occupied in the restoration of health to other men by the joint exertion of skill and humanity are above all the great of the earth. They even partake of divinity, since to preserve and renew is almost as noble as to create." We have spent years exploring the mysteries of the human body, working round the clock, continuing to breathe life into patients. Yet, even in the midst of all this, there are some who have gone beyond the confines of their medical practice and nurtured their true identity and talents. The theme this year revolves around the science culture, a culture that has always emphasized on all-round proficiency over just academic excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you Rhapsody 2015, redefining realms, flying past the frontiers. What we bring forth is a culmination of months of collective struggle. If Rhapsody was the editor's brainchild, the team made it a masterwork. Therefore, I, Radhika Bade, take this opportunity to thank my entire editorial team, without whom the task would have been unthinkable. Firstly, Umang Sheth, our General Secretary, for entrusting me with this responsibility and giving me all the freedom to experiment. Our Account Secretary, Ashish Khanve, for never letting money be a hurdle. Swara Pense, Srinivas Venkatesh, and Rishikesh Naik, for their pure creative genius and relentless support. Rishikesh Deshpande, Olivia Mesquita, for doing some brilliant interviews. Gaurav and Bhargavi for managing the Marathi section so efficiently. Mrinalini and Samir for their talent infused life into the comics. Vaidehi, Harshit and Manjunath, their wit and humor is in one word stupendous. Mihir for coming up with the concept of the photography page. I am particularly grateful to our professors and the alumni doctors for taking time out of their busy schedules and providing us a detailed insight into their lives. Whether it was through thought-provoking writing or heartwarming poetry or the amazing works of art and photography, I am thankful to everyone who has contributed to making Rhapsody worth the read. Lastly, Mr. Valan Benetter, our publisher, for his remarkable patience and expertise. Working on Rhapsody has been a privilege, and the journey truly overwhelming. From several brainstorming sessions to a good number of creative differences to the innumerable last-minute changes, we have experienced a plethora of emotions. The day we have all been looking forward to in anticipation has finally dawned. I now request all the dignitaries on the dais to please do the honors.
We are now going to have our next oration by Dr. Revathi Raj.
Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers, especially Dr. Mamta Manglani, for this honor. It's really been a pleasure here. I was warmly surprised, pleasantly surprised by the warm welcome at the airport. I had two handsome young guys in a Mercedes Benz with orchids welcoming me here, and it was, yeah, it was unbelievable. It made me feel truly special, and I really hope I can share some of the experiences I have had over the last 20 years on the work that I do. And all the organizers, thank you for having me here, and madam, thank you for giving me this very great privilege. And I'm here to talk about hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, an Indian perspective. So first, I want to begin by saying greetings from Chennai, and we were badly hit by the floods, and especially where I lived and where I worked, we had a lot of trouble. We were, I would say, underwater for days with no communication. My parents live just 6 kilometers away, and I had no contact with them for 3 whole days. So it was a scary experience. And but we're back on track right now, and thanks to the spirit of Chennai. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is stem cell transplantation, and what is bone marrow transplantation, what is cord blood transplantation, because stem cells are now used as a generic term for everything. And people really think, you know, when there was churning of the ocean and what came out, there was a magic potion which is a cure to all evils of the world. So is that truly the case, or is it something, what is it in reality? And there are certain genetic disorders we deal with. What are the considerations when we deal with these genetic conditions? What lies ahead? What about the future? And what can we do in India? Because when you see everyday poverty, everyday diseases like TB and malaria, why are we talking about stem cells? Is it something that should we be pursuing? Is it ideal for our country? So all of these questions which I've asked myself, I'd like to share the views that I have over the next 40 minutes, and then I'll leave some time for questions if any of you wished. So all of us like stories, and my stories and the need to do this sort of transplantation have always come from real life children. So this little boy had had a long fight with leukemia, blood cancer, and it had come back. His only chance of cure was to have new stem cells, and otherwise he wasn't going to be cured of his leukemia. And at that time, no center in India was doing transplantation to save such children, because we didn't have the means to do transplantation for such highly specialized cases. So he was a real teacher for me, a walking encyclopedia on how to get cord blood stem cells from abroad, use it to treat a child with cancer, and now he's about 8 years post-transplant, doing really well at school. And there are certain genetic disorders. You would have seen these children who look a bit like circus dwarfs. It's a rare condition called mucopolysaccharidosis. So these children with hurlers usually die between their 2nd to 5th birthday. So this little girl already had lost, the family had lost one sibling to a similar condition and mucopolysaccharidosis, and she came to me at 9 months old. And is there a hope for her future? If we changed her stem cells, could she live? So these are stories that touch you and inspire to move forward in the field of transplantation. You would have heard of bubble babies, babies born with no immune system. So they can't fight everyday diseases, coughs and colds. BCG vaccination that they have results in disseminated tuberculosis. So these sort of children are those that shape our lives every day and say we can do something for them, we can make a difference. a condition that you all see here, thalassemia major. So 10,000 new babies are born in our country with thalassemia major every year, just for simple sheer lack of awareness. And these babies look normal, healthy at birth, and after 3 to 4 months require blood transfusion every month. I recently visited the Dubai Thalassemia Center, and they said that they've had no new births over the last 3 years because it's mandatory in Dubai for the couple to produce their thalassemia screening card. So if both a couple are thalassemia carriers, they are offered genetic counseling and prenatal diagnosis, so there's no new births. Whereas we have in our country yet 10,000 new births every year, and these children mostly end up as infant mortality statistics, or in states like Maharashtra, they have good transfusion chelation system. They get to their second decade of life. But what is the future for such children? So with this, I'll begin by spending a few minutes on stem cells. I know you're all fresh from anatomy and physiology, so I don't have to say much. This is more for the talks that I do for gynecologists who've forgotten most embryology and basic anatomy and physiology. So it's a generic talk. So we have different types of stem cells in our body. When we fuse an egg and a sperm, that is the most important stem cell that we have. It's a totipotential stem cell. It can give rise to all the organs of our body. So you name it, you can get from that. But every organ on its own has committed stem cells. So in the brain, for example, we have stem cells that can only make brain cells of belonging to the brain. In the blood, we have the haematopoietic stem cells, and it can give rise to red cells, white cells, and platelets on a daily basis. So every organ of our body, we have cardiac stem cells, we have haematopoietic stem cells, neuronal stem cells, and each of these give rise to various cells belonging to that particular organ. So what we deal with are hematopoietic stem cells. We are not dealing with embryonic stem cells at all, because that has a lot of ethical regulations. So embryonic stem cells basically you get in infertility labs. You have the egg and the sperm fused, and technically you can take an embryo, put it on a culture medium, say you make cardiac cells, you make nerve cells, and this, a lot of research is being done. And there was Bush administration which completely banned embryonic stem cells because they considered it as killing a life. But now again we know that it has a lot of potential. So embryonic stem cells are mainly used in regenerative medicine. So this is when one organ fails, you want to replace that particular organ. So embryonic stem cells, a lot of work is being done in regenerative medicine. We don't have enough laws, regulations in our country yet as to how to use them, how to harness their potential, what is the best way forward. So I'm going to stick to just hematopoietic stem cells that we use on an everyday basis. So what I'm talking is not research or science fiction or what we're going to see in the future, what we do on a daily basis. So hematopoietic stem cells are made in our bone marrow. So you think of the bone marrow as a nice little garden. We have seed and we have soil. So the stem cell is the seed, and it's nicely sitting in a stroma, which is producing all juices like GCSF and interleukins and cytokines, which help thrombopoietin, all the things needed for blood cells to form. And our heart is ticking every day, we are aware of that, but our stem cells are making blood cells every day from the time we are born till we die, but nobody appreciates its value unless it stops working. So it's just like our mother, we only miss them when they are not there. So we don't appreciate what we do when they're around. So hematopoietic stem cells differentiate into the common lymphoid progenitor, which makes lymphoid cells, and the myeloid progenitor, which gives rise to red blood cells, platelets, and the granulocytic series. And you have them sitting in a bed of mesenchymal stem cells, which are the stroma. So we have various things that can go wrong, and only when we go wrong, the disease conditions tells us a lot about what is normal. So if our stem cells were to fail, that condition is called aplastic anemia, and that can be acquired or it can be genetic. And Fanconi anemia is one condition that has taught us a lot about tumor formation as well, because there is even basic DNA repair. So the children cannot repair their DNA, so their marrow fails, plus they are at risk of malignancy. So Fanconi has taught us a lot about cancer and about hematopoiesis. So these are very rare conditions, but they are life-threatening. And aplastic anemia, if you have someone who's been coming to school or college or doing their work until yesterday, but today they can't make blood at all, they can't make red cells, they feel tired, they can't make white blood cells, they're prone to infections. And these infections are not from outside, they're from their own body. So bacteria from their gut get into their system, cause infection, and they don't have platelets, so they bleed every day. So suddenly they can have an intracerebral bleed. So these are things that just hit you from nowhere. Red blood cell disorders, I have already told you about thalassemia major, how the children are tied for life, and a very painful genetic condition belonging to red blood cells called sickle cell disease. You see that quite a lot coming from your border with Madhya Pradesh and tribals from Orissa and tribals from Gujarat. Basically, these red cell disorders, the carrier states by evolution were present in our population to give us some advantage against serious form of malaria. And then we started marrying within tribes, within families, and that's when diseases get manifested, when two carriers get married without the knowledge. And we did an interesting survey in one of the hills near in Tamil Nadu called Chitteri. And we literally had to walk the last 6 kilometers. There was not even a road to drive. And 23% of the population were either sickle or thal carriers there, and these people had no idea about what is red blood cells, that it came from the blood. They just thought that their water was bad, and that's why the children were suffering. So there was a lot of lack of awareness in the community. And they only came for the testing because the local church pastor called them and said they would get free biryani for the day. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come. So, white blood cell disorders can be equally challenging. We have a lot of patients with leukemia or blood cancer. A lot of them we try to cure with chemotherapy these days. But there are a few who remain refractory to chemotherapy, or their disease comes back after chemotherapy, and there, if we change their stem cells, they stand a chance of cure. And then I told you about the bubble babies who are born without an immune system. Now, the exact numbers of these children born in our country, we have no data, because obviously ours is a poor country. Infections are very common. Most of these children whom we count as septicemia, multi-organ failure, they could be immune deficiency, and we don't have exact numbers as to how many are actually immune deficient. But there must be quite a lot that we are missing that come under infant mortality. And I told you about the seed and the soil. When the soil gets completely frozen, it's like marble. That disease is called osteopetrosis. That again is life-threatening, and that can be cured with stem cell change. Body's immune system goes rampant. It's not able to recognize self from foreign. It's destroying parts of self where macrophages get activated. That disease we call a very complicated term, which I simplify and say HLH. That can also be cured with stem cell transplantation. Some platelet disorders where they are prone to bleeding for life. So mind you, all of the stem cell therapies that we offer are only for the cellular component of blood. So patients who have plasma disorders like hemophilia, factor VIII deficiency, we cannot treat them using stem cell transplantation at the moment. I mentioned about these metabolic disorders, because how do these metabolic disorders evolve? We have monocytes in the blood. They go into the tissues. They have to become macrophages. So when macrophages are filled with storage products, either about carbohydrate metabolism or lipid storage, like in Gaucher's disease, all of this can be cured using stem cell transplantation. Sometimes we take a patient's stem cells and put it back into themselves. Now, why would we do that? They have very difficult tumors to treat. probably a lymphoma, a lymph gland cancer, or a neuroblastoma, which is a cancer of the adrenal gland, and we want to deliver very high doses of chemotherapy. Now that would be toxic to the stem cells. Stem cells can't take so much chemotherapy that's required to get rid of their solid tumor. So we take the patient's stem cells, put it in the freezer, give them the required chemotherapy, and use their own stem cells back as rescue. Now this is what people are looking at in the future in case there's a nuclear disaster and we all are going to run out of marrow because of the nuclear disasters, and there'll be thousands of us who are aplastic anemia. So what do we do in such a situation? So when we get a patient referred, what do we do? How do we select the patient? What do we do on a clinical basis? This I won't spend too much time, but there are interesting stories and lessons to learn from each of this, which is why I thought I put this whole process of what we do with the patient. This is the same whether they're child or adult or whatever their underlying disorder are, because the principle of transplantation is the same no matter what condition we treat. So first we need to choose our patients carefully. Anyone who has a particular problem, we can't promise universally that a transplant is going to work. Then we know that most of India, it's an agricultural country, so we need to know how to do gardening on a daily basis. So this is what we do on a daily basis. You have to prepare the patient to receive new stem cells, and that we call conditioning. And that's like preparing the soil to put in new seeds, because if you have a whole soil full of weeds, you're not going to accept new stem cells. Then you have to choose, how are we going to take these very important haematopoietic stem cells? These are the seeds. And we take them from the donor, whoever is the donor, and put it into our patient. That is called infusion of stem cells. Then we have to wait for 2 to 3 weeks. That is the nurturing period where we are watering the plants, keeping the soil clean, making sure there are no major storms to get our stem cells destroyed. So that period we provide supportive care until the new stem cells are taken up, and that period is called engraftment. Then we have to make sure that these new stem cells are accepted in the patient's body. Now you know that a lot of us, we match horoscopes. Then we say, are you from Yadav community? I'm from Yadav community. Maybe we should get along. Our parents like each other. We would get along. But no, not all marriages are happy. Some of them end up getting divorced. So like this, we can have rejection or graft versus host disease when the stem cells and the patient's body don't agree with each other. So we have to make some peacekeeping for about a year, and they're on immunosuppressants for a year so that they both accept each other. And this is the difference between other organ transplantation and hematopoietic, where they're on lifelong immunosuppression. Here, the new immune system becomes the patient's immune system, so they don't need to continue lifelong immunosuppressive medication. Now, transplant has taught us a lot about basic immunology. How do I accept self from foreign? I know that this is bacteria, I have to kill it. I know this is my own platelet cell, so I shouldn't kill it. So how do I know? Self means tolerance, foreign means kill. So this comes from a very unique system in our body called HLA. HLA stands for human leukocyte antigen, and that is a very important component before we choose our patients. We look at diseases, what is their disease status. Their red blood cell group may be different, A group, B group, doesn't matter. It can be boy into girl, girl into boy, that doesn't matter. Some of our pediatric patients are very scared, especially the boys, because they think they're going to become like a girl if they have their sister's bone marrow, and they'll start growing long hair and start getting periods, which is not the case. It's only the hematopoietic system that is replaced. And age doesn't matter. We have donors from newborn age group to well over their 60s. So HLA typing, I told you, this is a mechanism for us to detect self from foreign. It's coded for on our chromosome 6. And these genes tell us who we are and who somebody else is. And we have class 1 antigens, which are A, B, and C, that are present in all our nucleated cells of our body. For example, our red blood cells and platelets, they are non-nucleated cells. They don't carry HLA, which is the basis of our transfusion program. Because they don't carry HLA, you can take it from one person and give it to another. If they carried HLA system, our body wouldn't accept platelets and red blood cells. Class 2 antigens, which are DRB1 and DQB1, are only carried by our specialized cells of our immune system, which is our T lymphocytes, then natural killer cells and antigen presenting cells, because these are the cells that talk to each other. Antigen presenting cells goes to the T lymphocyte, says this is foreign antigen. T lymphocyte starts the attack to say, yes, we have to make sure this is not part of our body. This HLA comes from our parents, and the chance that me and my brother will be fully matched on HLA is only 30%. So only 30% of us are lucky to have a brother or sister who's matching, who can donate their stem cells. And with more and more nuclear families coming in, not everyone who needs a transplant actually has a donor. So this is becoming a problem, because if we don't have fully HLA match, you won't be able to put in the new donor cells. The patient won't be able to accept it. So there may be rejection or graft versus host disease. Disease status is also important. Now I was telling you about thalassemia. All of you are going to see thalassemia here. If you're working in Sion Hospital, Dr. Manglani has this huge unit. So if we are giving transfusion and chelation to a child regularly, then a thalassemia patient should look just like anyone else. So if we can maintain their hemoglobin above 9 all the time, they will grow well. For example, in this child, he's been lifelong under transfused. So she's 14, he's also 14. Because his average hemoglobin has been 4 to 5 grams all his life, his growth is very stunted. And when every unit of blood he's received has 200 milligram of iron, and that's choking his heart and his liver. So he is not someone who will be able to go through a transplant easily, because he's under transfused and he's loaded with iron, and the whole process of transplantation can kill him. But if we have beautiful children like these, one patient is a donor, one person is the patient, and one is the donor, who are twins, who are 2 years old, and we do their transplant early before all other problems of the disease sets in, their outcome is really excellent. So patient selection is very important, and this is where we shouldn't try to play God, saying I can cure everyone. When we choose, we have to be able to say no, who I can do, who I can't do, because the ability to refuse a patient also comes with wisdom. If you've fallen flat 3-4 times and then you know it won't work, then you'll pick up the courage to say no. And initially there is arrogance of youth, so that comes with time. Then severe combined immune deficiency, if the patient is already on the ventilator, there's no immunity, the lungs are white out. Yes, they have a fully matched donor, but how are we going to get them out of the current infection? So this is going to be tough. Whereas if they come early, within a few weeks, you do their transplant, they're going to have the best outcome. So patient choice is very important. Then how are we going to prepare them to receive the new stem cells? That is a really big field of transplant medicine now, because we need to give these patients very high doses of chemotherapy or radiotherapy, so that all their blood stem cells will dissolve and come out in their urine. So this period of 1 week is what's going to give us all the immediate toxicity and who they're going to be later in life. Now I have bad leukemia, I have to get rid of it, I have to give them whole body radiotherapy. Only then their leukemia will go. So this child is going to carry the burden of all this whole body radiotherapy in the future. They will probably be hypothyroid, they will have infertility and growth, slight problems with growth if they are transplanted early. So these are things that we plan very carefully based on the individual patient's need. And more we are saying that so heavy duty chemotherapy, we have to move away from them, because they carry immediate and late toxicity, but we can create space in the marrow and cheat the immune system, use drugs that cheat the immune system to get the new cells in, so that the immune system won't even notice that somebody else is there in their space. So a lot of very wonderful research is being done in this field. For example, recently we read an article, a person who came and presented at a premier meeting in Transplant to say that he's got mouse models where the stem cells carry CD34 and CD133 antigen. So he has tagged CD133 antibody to yttrium radioisotope, and if he injects it into these mice, only the stem cells get dissolved and the rest of their body doesn't have toxicity, not the gonads, not the heart, not the liver. So you can give chemotherapy without any toxicity. So this is the future. Hopefully we'll be able to prepare patients much better in the future rather than what we are doing right now. So this is what we call myeloablative, non-myeloablative, and this actually is an evolving field. How do we take the stem cells? Are we going to take it out of a person's bone marrow? Are we going to take out the few stem cells that we have circulating in our blood? Or are we going to tap umbilical cord blood? So basically umbilical cord blood is only baby's bone marrow stem cells. So you should not confuse it with embryonic stem cells just because it's a newborn baby. Baby is making huge quantities of bone marrow cells, and as there's maternal exchange between the mother and the baby through the cord, a lot of its bone marrow stem cells are there in that 100 ml of cord. And it was a biological waste up until now. We were throwing the cord blood, and with so many deliveries in our country, if we are able to have the resources to store each of these cord blood, then those 70% patients who don't have a matched donor will potentially have a matched donor from this cord blood bank. So that was the idea, but the resources needed to store each cord unit is quite high. So bone marrow as a seed is the standard. So you can see there's a huge difference between bone marrow, the number of stem cells, cord blood, very tiny, and peripheral blood, we can get huge numbers. This is in blue. So although there's huge difference, we choose based on what is the donor preference. So bone marrow harvest we do in theatre under general anesthesia, multiple punctures to the posterior iliac crest. We aspirate the bone marrow using special needles and put it in a bag, and it's rich in stem cells. And we found that the younger they are, the more number of stem cells they give. So if the donor is 2 years old and the patient is 10 years old, we shouldn't worry how are they going to be able to donate enough. The younger ones have a huge number. Peripheral blood stem cells, each of us can be a peripheral blood stem cell donor. 0.1% of our blood has stem cells, blood stem cells, and I can boost this by giving 3 to 4 days of GCSF injection. This stands for granulocyte colony stimulating factor. So this has become now an office outpatient procedure. So I come, take 4 days of the injection. 5th day we have the special machine called the Cobe Spectra. And it's a wonderful machine because the whole kit is disposable like the dialysis machine. So the patient, the donor, healthy donor comes and has a line which removes their blood, goes through the machine, separates out only the stem cells, and the rest of their blood is returned back into the donor. So in 90 minutes he's become a lifesaver, and it doesn't harm him in any way because he's donated stem cells and he's going to regenerate them. And this is the way we are moving forward with collecting stem cells. Cord blood, of course, when the baby is born, the cord is cut and the baby is removed from the scene, and so the baby is not losing anything. And when we are cannulating the cord and by gravity collecting about 100 ml blood. So these cells have to be preserved using a chemical called DMSO, which keeps the cells alive and suspended, and we preserve them in liquid nitrogen. And you know that liquid nitrogen constantly become vapor phase. So you have to keep adding liquid nitrogen, and that's where the cost of keeping these stem cells alive for 20 years comes, because every day we have to keep topping up liquid nitrogen so that the cells are suspended in minus 180 degrees Celsius. And it's amazing that you wake them up after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, they wake up, you thaw them and you inject them into the patient and they work as good as new. And putting it into the patient is the simplest part. We just have to have a central venous catheter and inject it over 1 hour. So most patients, families are very worried about the day of infusion. what's going to happen, thinking it's major procedure, surgery. So then they look, it's only a blood transfusion, so that's how it is. But they have worries about the donor. So after putting in the stem cells, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. You have no hemoglobin, no white blood cells. It becomes zero, and platelets are zero. So you have to support this patient for 2 weeks. You need fully air filtered clean rooms so that they don't catch infections, one-to-one nursing, and make sure that they have good nutrition support. They've been through chemotherapy, they can't eat, they may have mucositis. All bacteria, fungus and virus can settle in their body, because you leave a piece of bread on your table, there's moisture, fungi settle. So here there is a patient with open mucous membranes because of the chemotherapy. Bacteria are there in the gut, they're going to happily move into the blood, which contains glucose, and grow rapidly in the blood. So they need support for all these 2 to 3 weeks, and the support will have to come with tender loving care, because it's a difficult period, and a lot of supportive care gets intensive as we move with the more difficult patients. So after this time, we have to make sure you adjust your immune suppression. There's a patient with zero white count, and you have to give them immunosuppressive drugs so that they don't reject the new bone marrow stem cells, and they don't get GVHD. GVHD stands for graft versus host disease. If I don't like new stem cells and I remove them from my body, that's rejection. The new stem cells don't like me. I'm in a new body, I'm in a new environment, I don't like this, and they find out the difference despite full HLA matching, then they predominantly affect the gut and skin and liver. And here also basic immunology has taught us why only gut, liver and skin. These are the areas where we have maximum antigen presenting cells. So the antigen presenting cells are there in this area. Hey, I'm here but I'm different. And the donor's lymphocytes will look at all those areas that are different and start causing inflammation, and that is called GVHD. So rejection, we're in trouble because we've removed the old stem cells, there's no new stem cells. GVHD, we are in trouble because the new stem cells don't like them. We have to immunosuppress them more, and we get quite a lot of infections. Nothing happens, everyone's happy, accepting each other, then we have an amazing new life, and that's the optimum outcome we want in every transplant. So this happens in the majority of the cases, which is a good thing. But there are some special consideration when we deal with children, and we have to think of them all through their growth. So what we do today should give intact survival for them. So we have to screen who's their donor. If it's a genetic condition, the donor shouldn't have the same genetic condition. We have to do the transplant correct timing. If they have osteopetrosis, they've lost their vision, then you do the transplant, then they're going to be blind lifelong. So these things we have to keep in mind, and also warn parents about the long-term side effects. Even families of adults who go through transplant, what are the long-term side effects? What are the advances we've made in India for those who don't have a match family donor, the 70% of patients? We now are connected to worldwide registries, which is a really good way about how people work together. So there are 20 million donors registered worldwide to be a stem cell donor. So there's database in the US, in Australia, UK, and we can search it online within 5 minutes to see if our patient has a match. And today my special message to each of you is you can register to be a stem cell donor, and that gift of life will be so special that your unique HLA with some patient who needs it. And blood donors, any of us can be a blood donor, but stem cell is unique in a way because no one else is like you for that particular patient. And Datri is an Indian stem cell registry. In Mumbai you have MDRI, in Bangalore you have bone marrow registry in India. So you can choose whichever registry you want and register, because for one of these patients you can be a donor. And cord blood, as I said, is also a very rich source of stem cells, and this is my first cord blood transplant patient who came from Uganda. The mother had already lost a child to bleeding with aplastic anemia, and we weren't doing unrelated transplant at that time. There were no match family donors. but he had good matches from African descent people in New York, and the cord blood was flown to India. He had the transplant, and he's now 6 feet 2 inches tall, going to class 11 and looking really handsome. So it's made the world a small place. So you got people coming from different parts of the world, they find matches in different parts of the world, they get treatment in another part of the world, and we all seem to work in perfect harmony. So another advance in the field of transplant, just for those who are interested in science, is embryo selection. So I said about the egg and a sperm. Now if I had a child with thalassemia major, I go for counseling. What should I plan my next baby? The doctor would tell me, your next baby, you're a carrier, your husband's a carrier, your next baby has a 25% chance of being affected. Oh no, I don't want that. Okay, if they are in the 75% group who are not affected, will that baby's stem cells match for my daughter? I want to cure her of her thalassemia. The chance of the stem cell matching out of that 75% is only 30%. So my final chance of finding a suitable donor in nature by natural pregnancy is 12%, and that seems like an awfully small amount if I have to go through multiple testing and abortions to get the perfect baby who will save my first child. So we have something called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where they give medications to the mother to make 8 to 10 eggs, then take donor sperms from the father and make embryos, and from one single cell we now have technology to check whether by PCR whether the embryo is affected with any genetic condition like thalassemia, or are they match or not, and then take that embryo and put it into the mother's womb. So the rest of the pregnancy is all going to be like any other pregnancy. So this is amazing technology which was first done for a patient with Fanconi anemia in the US, and the Savior sibling saved this child's life, and we had the chance to transplant this child. Mother waited for 13 years when this child was getting transfused with thalassemia. She had twins who were both matched for this girl. So we used both the cord blood cells from the two brothers, and she's now cured of thalassemia. So it is feasible. What about the people we search in all registries? Your HLA is so unique that you're not matched with anyone else. You're only half match with your mother, half match with your father, half match with your brother. This is called haplo. Haplo is half match. So a group of researchers, this is true innovation in Johns Hopkins Hospital in the US, found that once you give the stem cells which are not matching, exactly on day 3 and day 4, the T lymphocytes from the donor get into the patient and say, hey, this is not me, and I have to start mounting an attack. So these are called alloreactive T cells. So day 3, day 4, we need one drug to destroy just that clone of lymphocytes that are going to create problems. Then we'll be able to put in even half-matched stem cells. So a simple cheap drug like cyclophosphamide was given day 3, day 4. All of these trouble-causing lymphocytes are destroyed. So we have now a novel protocol which has really shaken the world of transplant, where we can use half-match HLA donors, and in Mumbai we've got our first Fanconi patient who got transplanted, and this little boy on the left there, his from 3 months of age he was on regular platelet transfusion. He had aplastic anemia, and he came to us when he was nearly 4 on a weekly platelet transfusion, mind you, from small baby, and now he's cured of his aplastic anemia. The stem cells that we have can also be a source to insert missing genes. So this is called gene therapy, and it's being successfully used in conditions like severe combined immune deficiency, where the bone marrow cells of the patient is collected, what gene they are missing is incorporated into the patient. Gene therapy is really exciting because we have viral vectors that integrate into our DNA. They will carry the missing gene, get into the hematopoietic cells, and then you inject it back into the patient, so that now you have a good source of stem cells that are replete with the missing genes. So in a way, we don't have the problem of graft rejection, graft versus host disease, because it's your own stem cells, you're not going to reject them. So gene therapy is looking exciting for the moment, and maybe more and more genetic disorders will be cured with gene therapy. So all of this is feasible, and from my own little practice, what I've learned last 20 years, what are the challenges in our country. As the person who introduced me said, that I trained abroad for 9 years. Then you come back and you say, I can do that, I can do this. And then after some time you've tried all those things and you know what works, what doesn't work, and for what we can be confident about, what we can be proud about. The main thing I find in our country is the lack of access to transplant centers. It's a huge country. We have 1 billion population. So there's a patient in Mumbai and you can't tell them to come all the way to Chennai for transplant. For them, even traveling within Mumbai, which is a big city, might be a problem. They'll be in Delhi and they'll be in Chandigarh. Their transplant center will be in Delhi. So access to transplant centers is a problem. What are our indications for transplant? Are they different to what they're seeing in the UK and US? How do we provide supportive care? How are we going to get funding for these costly procedures? What can we innovate within our country for all these, what we call niche areas? So you go through this moral dilemma in your system when people are dying of vaccine preventable diseases. Do you really need such niche areas, or should we go back to primary health care and say we have to do primary health care? But even if 1% of our population needs this care, 1% is a huge number in our country. So we have to have people who can balance even such niche areas. So there are many transplant centers in the US, and they're doing more than 10,000 transplants per year. For our population of 1 billion, we do less than 700 per year, with a few centers started 10 years ago, but in the last 3 years we have over 37 centers doing transplant. So capacity building and to inspire younger people like you, I feel, is the main purpose of my talk here, to say that we have a future. We can help as many people with the treatments that we give in the future. Even though there's a land of huge differences, we know that we need not deny access to any high-end therapy for any patient. If you have the will, you have crowdfunding, you have internet where you can do appeals. So for my practice, although I work in Apollo, so far I've never needed to deny any patient treatment because of lack of funding, because there are NGOs, there are private CSR activities. So we just have to introduce the patient to the person who's going to provide their funding so that they are able to complete their treatment. Most of the access to care is because the referring physicians themselves don't know it's feasible. So thalassemia patients will be on transfusion for 10 years, 15 years. Then when they're going to go to college, they'll get angry and say, why should I have transfusion every month? Isn't there any other way? And then they'll say, maybe you should go for Haematopoeitic. Why didn't I know all the way along? Because even our own primary care pediatricians need to be educated. And sometimes we make our decisions for patients because we think this is too costly. If we tell them, they won't be able to do it. But we have had from our own experience a patient from B.J. Wadia Children's Hospital here who had an unrelated transplant for thalassemia because a big Hindi movie star whom I won't name, the dad is a driver in his house, and the movie star sponsored the transplant. Now the child is disease free and doing well. So our supportive care, we have to also, when they go back to the community, tell the parents how they should keep the patient clean, treat infections. So it should be an ongoing community effort, and we have to have public-private partnership and transfer of knowledge. It should not be only in niche hospitals and say only we do it. It should be accessible for everyone. We've done our own innovations. Every day we are looking at cost cutting, even in the private sector. So it's not like public sector's cost cutting, private doesn't, and we want to offer expensive treatment. So what are ways to reduce costs we are looking at, and how to work with different people, collaborate between our own centers. So before we used to write to a center abroad to ask what would you do. Now we know we have experts within our country. We talk to each other when we have difficult cases, and look at experiences that other people have had, learn not to make the same mistakes again. So create our own database, learn from that. So for example, cord plus bone marrow. If we have a thalassemia patient, we collect cord blood from the sibling, and that alone is not enough for the older child. So we use little bit of bone marrow from the sibling, and when we combine the two, the outcomes are so much better, and the donor doesn't have to give huge amounts of bone marrow. So there are some innovations we've done by working together to improve standards of care. So what transplant has taught us, a lot of acute care because there are emergencies, a lot of chronic care because there are long-term issues, how to work together as a team. We need teams of doctors. This is 24/7, 365. You can't sit in one place and not go on holiday. So you need to have a whole team. Nursing is very important because infection rates go up, and supportive care. Good blood bank, very, very important to have a good database of blood bank. And what we are increasingly seeing is infections. You know that there are superbug problems in our hospital. Our own hands can kill our patients. What one patient has multi-drug resistant bacteria in their system, if we don't do hand rub and sterilize our hands and touch the next patient, our stethoscopes, our pens, our mobile phones can kill a patient. So a robust hospital infection control policy, if the bugs are cleverer than us, we need to know how to outsmart them. And this is becoming an increasingly difficult issue in transplant. We have to deal with all our tropical infections, challenge them, that is in addition. And we've done over 800 transplants at our center with more than 400 children being transplanted, mainly for hemoglobinopathy. So this is a good way, we're looking at our 1,000th mark, not just for the number, but the quality of work that we do. So transplant teaches us a lot of humility. You start off thinking, this is barn door case, I know what to do, they'll do something different. So all the arrogance in your system will go once you've done a few years of transplant, and you say when you're counseling, this is what we're going to do, the outcome only time will tell. Not say, I'm 100% sure you're going to get cured. So that you'll never use in your counseling. You'll need to know how to work as a team, and you need to be somebody who can listen to what are the problems and not always dictate. So you have to be a 360-degree physician to do transplant. And we have to share our experience rather than copy Western centers. Some days we're not curing them, but we just have a kind word to say. If a patient dies, our entire unit is crying, so you have to support nurses, junior doctors, and the family who's lost their child. And not to be judgmental. If someone says, no, I can't do this, and takes their patient away, we can't say, no, you can't do this. The Chennai floods taught us a lot about crisis management as well. So I had to literally wade into the hospital. Our junior doctors and nurses worked there 72 hours. And who got left behind? We were the blood donors, because there were no people who could come to donate blood or platelets for the patients. Oxygen cylinders had to be delivered for the patient. 2 streets away, the cylinder lorry got jammed. Couldn't come, there was water neck deep. So our ward boys had to go there, carry the oxygen cylinders on their shoulder and bring them to the hospital. There was only rice and potato for 3 days. All of us got served those rice and potato. So to run services like this, which cannot have a break, we need to have crisis management as well. And I'm looking forward to being part of the team where we are the gentle giants that make a service but not make a lot of noise about it. And those who are looking forward to careers like this, my last piece of advice is always find a nice work-life balance. Who you are is because of who are behind you. And don't forget them, to make sure they feel important, make sure you allocate time for those who have made who you are, and appreciate all the things they do. And we have a long way to go, but I feel where we are right now, for the next 10 years, if we keep at this pace, our country will have more data than what we can produce in the West, and hopefully we'll be a premier center for hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful session. I would like to request Dr. Mamta Manglani ma'am to come onto the stage and present ma'am a token of her appreciation.
Revathi, that was really a wonderful talk by you, wonderful oration. I'm having goosebumps all over. Even though I'm a hematologist for last 30 years, but 20 years of your transplant journey has put me back to my student times. I felt I'm learning from a person who simplified transplant into something which I can do today. So thank you for that lovely lecture. And especially, I must admit, her daughter was having exams till yesterday. So when I spoke to her first, she said, "Ma'am, I don't know whether I can make it, but if you keep my talk on the 13th, I will surely come in the morning and be there." This is the commitment of a person to the subject. Thank you so much. But I also want to give you a piece of news from my own side. We started the transplant in our own institution. We have a hematopoietic stem cell transplant program now. We are into the 4th patient who has been infused about 7 days ago. And so far, touch wood, things are in control. And this is with blessings of people like her, because on a day-to-day basis, we keep troubling her with emails and messages that this is a problem and what do we do, and she promptly answers. I mean, thank you even for those inputs, Revathi. And I must also tell you all, being an LTMCite, this is the advantage you have, that these type of things which are not available in any other public hospital in the whole state of Maharashtra, you are witness to it in your own institution. Thank you.